Thank you guys for joining us. And to anybody else who's joining us, welcome. So we are joined today in our first ever 2620 virtual class slash community conversation by Raymar Hampshire, he, him, who is a Washington, D.C. based product lead and research affiliate on the Public Interest Technology Knowledge Network team at the Michigan Institute for Data and AI in Society, or MIDAS, at University of Michigan, which of course we will not hold against him. Because having grown up in Lima, Ohio, and with a lot of family still there, Raymar identifies as a Midwesterner and an Ohioan. So that ethos comes through in his demeanor and in his work, which is focused on building and community. For the last few years, Raymar has been deploying his skills as a community builder and a product developer to launch Braid, an open source educational platform that fosters social learning through civil discourse about technology and society within a diverse global community. So, welcome, Raymar.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and happy Friday, everyone. Yeah, really excited to share a little bit more about kind of my experience and really gracious for Lisa for creating this space. And yeah, hopefully this is helpful for you all as you sort of think about your own journey. Um, and yeah, looking forward to diving into this. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, let's get started. So, when did you start identifying with public interest technology as a field? And when did you start to think of your work and your interests as being pit?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question because for the longest time, you know, I consider myself a social entrepreneur. And I'll still use that language as well, but really since around 2020, when New America, which is a think tank based here in DC, they launched a network called the Public Interest Technology University Network. And at the time, um, I started up a social impact firm called Generation Titans, and I can talk about that later on. But a lot of our work was geared towards supporting social entrepreneurs, supporting an ecosystem of social entrepreneurs, and providing strategic consulting, providing connections and resources to funding, or connections to resources and funding. And it was around that time in 2020 where uh, I was introduced to public interest technology, and I started to make a lot of the connections with uh, the role of social entrepreneurs in our society to public interest technology. And I started to think about my own work in that light. And what I really like about public interest technology, the mission and the mandate is built into the title of the field. And so I just thought that that was a good sort of um, banner really to start doing a lot of my work under. And I transitioned to University of Michigan back in 2020, literally months before the pandemic, and have been a part of this field. Lisa, as you know, I mean, it's a growing field. It's a very nascent field. But I think the beauty in what we are doing is that the mandate and really this large kind of great mission is built into the to those three words, public interest technology.
That's so true. I know the students are really tired of hearing me say that because we talk about it literally every time we're in class, but it's so true. It's built right into the mandate, which is nice. It's nice to have a title that's reflective of the mission too, which is helpful. So of course, this, as you and I have talked about, this entire course is really predicated on a space in which we can investigate how science and technology can drive change for the betterment of society. They don't always do that, but they can, right? And so obviously that's an underpinning to Braid. So just tell us more about the central idea or purpose of Braid. Why do you feel like it needed to exist? What
Yeah.
made you develop it? And what do you think makes it unique? Why bother, Raymar? Why bother?
Sure. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think for us, or for me, I speak for us because our team, I'm one of many who are part of the Braid project. Um, but we started off grounded in research, right? And so, like I said, we were sort of uh, inspired by the work of social entrepreneurs, some of the work that I've had done in the past, and others. And so a core of our research, kind of starting off in 2020, was just looking at the career trajectory of social entrepreneurs, trying to understand, why they decided to embark on such a challenging endeavor, like starting something anew and really, creating something that didn't exist, and trying to understand all of the different, you know, challenges and the friction that they face during their journey. And so one of the things that we learned from just like studying and really being in community with social entrepreneurs was that there was really wasn't, it's really an isolating kind of endeavor. Um, and so there really wasn't enough spaces, both in person and online, where social entrepreneurs could really connect, share stories, and really validate their own experiences, right? And so we sort of took that as an opportunity to see if we can kind of create something for those social entrepreneurs, to really be in community with each other, really a space that was intentional about learning, a space that was like devoid from, likes and like, trying to be performative, but really just like being authentic and really just celebrating, the decisions that these practitioners have had made, and try to provide more space and more sort of peer support. And so, at the core of Braid is really this mission to democratize knowledge. And so we always say that, there's people who are subject matter experts, right? People who have studied a particular topic. Maybe they have a PhD or some advanced degree. And then there's also just people who are like experts of their own lived experience, right? And so, how do you democratize those two things, um, and really not place any value, in terms of what's more credible and what's not? And so, a lot of this comes out of like feminist theory, this idea that like, for women experiencing, they are experts of their own experiences, and so really adopting a lot of like feminist theory with our work, but really just like epistemology, like the ways that people know, right? Some things we just know because we experienced them. And so we wanted to put that knowledge side by side with like expert knowledge, quote unquote expert knowledge, but also just like real rigorous research, and like evidence-based knowledge. We want to put these two things to the side. And so Braid is our attempt to really do that. And I think it's really important, for the times that we live in, to do that.
I don't think we both knew this was going to happen. We have like a plan, and then we just sort of know that the plan isn't because we're going to start chatting. So,
Right?
uh, first of all, I don't think I ever, in all of our conversations, I don't think I ever knew that really this came out of sort of the social entrepreneur experience that you were already having,
Yeah,
right? But that makes total sense. Makes
yeah.
total sense. And I just, I've talked with the students about this. We've talked about this in 2620, but I'd never called this in before. But what you're saying about expertise from the community, so we have a professor at Ohio State who's a friend of mine who is also my personal hero, who I just kind of want to be her when I grow up. And her name is Shawnita Sealy Jefferson. And she says you cannot, she's an epidemiologist. She says you cannot be an expert from a community you're not from.
Mm, mm.
And really, she's got a PhD. She's a highly educated person. She says, but the real expertise comes from the lived experience. And I think that's part of what you're touching on there. And that's just so profound. So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely lots of nuance that you gain from being a part of the community that um, that you're creating with, right? And so, but yeah, definitely, I agree with that.
Creating with. There it is. Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked in this class a lot about how the definition of public interest technology is still totally emerging, right? It's an emerging field. We all sort of, some of us are nerdy enough to be having these discussions all the time about what's in and what's out of public interest technology. And so, in your mind, just for you, Raymar, who is an expert both in experience and in study in this field, what distinguishes a product or a service as a public interest technology? What are
This
like the distinguishing factors?
this is a really great question. I mean, I think on the surface, I think it's products that have been that are sort of built with and for a particular community. Um, and I think, obviously products that aim to, you know, do no harm, right? Um, and so I think, but when I sort of start to kind of peel back the layers, when I think about with public interest technology products, and this field is still nascent, and I don't think there's a lot of project products out there that are necessarily branding themselves as public interest technology, although they might look like public interest technology, may feel like it, but I don't know if we're to the point where that language has fully adopted, at least in the marketplace of like products and services, right? But I would say for me, and the work that our team does, it's not so much about the product or the service, it's about the process. It's about like the level of care and patience, and intentionality that you bring to building teams, to collaboration. So it's a lot of these internal things that are not necessarily seen, but they're felt through the product, right? And I think that's where I'd like to really, you know, sort of become more rooted and kind of grounded in terms of my own expertise, is like more around the inputs and the process of building technology. Um, because I think if we focus there, and I think if we embed empathy, embed, um, you know, patience, and learning, right? I think the byproduct of that, I think, is just better products, right? And so part of that process is like creating the team, but then also as you sort of work your way through this design life cycle, bringing in end users, people that you're designing for, bringing them in across that life cycle. And some stakeholders might be involved in the problem definition part of the process. Some might be involved in the design. Some might be involved in testing, using. Um, and so just bringing in as many of your community members into that process, and really allowing and creating a space where your community can actually shape and kind of co-create with you. Um, and so we do this a lot. We do this a lot with students. Students are our primary sort of end user. We sort of use user lightly, but these are the people that we build with and for. And so we like to bring students in through various parts of that life cycle, um, and and give them an amazing experience, like create an amazing experience where they can own a piece of the development, the design, and they can really contribute in a way that is real, that is tangible, um, and an experience that they'll feel good about. And I think to me, that's what public interest technology is really about. It's just like the people that you get to work with, just like as much as you can, like try to pour into that process as much as you can, and then the other things will sort of figure themselves out, because you never quite know exactly what that product or service is going to look like on the other end if you're doing it right. I think,
That's right.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It, like just like this conversation, like this, like we will start somewhere, but like we never exactly know where we're going to land with this until we're in community and conversation with each other. And that's where really the magic happens. And that's where I think you get products that are, are right sized for your community, and fit for what they need and what they want.
That's so true. Okay, so I have like 14 things to ask you about as follow up, but I'll hold myself back a little bit. So one is that this co-creation that you talked about and co-development, I'm not sure, and I'm wondering if you feel the same way. I'm not sure that that sort of we talk about public interest technology in design, development, deployment, right? But But I'm not sure that the idea of sort of co-creation and really, we talk about human-centered design, but not human-involved design and
Mm,
engaged design. And I wonder, A, if you feel the same way, and feel free to disagree. And then also sort of what the role of you use the phrase co-ownership, right? So like it's co-creation and co-ownership. And part of that with Braid is at least is that it's open source.
yep.
And I think we've had discussions before about like, is all public, to be public interest technology, does the product need to be open source? And I'm not sure we have an answer on that, but I don't care about my thoughts. I want to know what you think, what you're thinking about today, where you are today on that question.
Yeah, open source. So we're that's our North Star, right? We think that philosophically that in order for us to meet this mandate of being a public interest technology project, that we have to figure out what co-ownership looks like, right? It can't just be, you know, a few people that get to decide what this thing ultimately becomes or what it is, right? Because then there's nothing special about that. It's what we are used to, you know, in terms of what's out there, right? But so it does require public interest technologists, I think, to be more critical in terms of what conventions we decide to carry forward, and which ones we should reimagine and experiment, creating something new, right? Because I think that's also, I think, what might be missed in all of this is that the things that I'm doing, it's nascent, it's maybe even avant-garde, if you want to call it that. There's these frameworks, right, that around participatory design, human-centered research that we have borrowed, right?
Right.
And then there's aspects of it that just don't apply for what we're creating, right? And so like, how do we adapt? How do we be nimble? But I think it does just require a new set of critical thinking and questioning, um, the design process. And so yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is experimentation and really the patience that's required, to really experiment, and also because I mean, you know, open source also brings into a number of questions. I think people automatically associate open source with like, um, something that can't be sustainable, right, on its own, right? Um, that it's, you know, it's free, there's no value, like it's open
Right.
source, right? But I think that's a misnomer. And the more and more that I learn about open source, there actually is a lot of room to create an open source experience, that is not one that's like anybody can sign in and anybody can code and anybody has access to the code and all that. So you can actually have something that is open, but it's also, you know, managed and governed, right? All of these things are part of, what it means to be open source. And we're going down that road and we continue to go down that road and we're learning a lot through the process. But I thought it was very important for our team really to just establish ourselves as an open source project because the values are something that we want to live up to.
That's as you were describing how you sort of think about open source, I thought, oh, that's what a democracy is supposed to be,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Everybody
Yeah.
contributes, but it's not an unmanaged Wild West situation, right? There's management, there's governance, but fundamentally, everybody owns it and everybody participates,
Oh, that's yeah. I mean, boom. Like
right?
that's a lightning moment for me, right? Making that connection. It's totally right.
Yeah.
Exactly what
Um,
we're attempting to do here is to democratize this space, right? Because, you know, the spectrum of contributions for our project range. I mean, there's people that, are involved in the problem definition. There's people that are involved in designing prototypes and coming up with ideas for the user experience. There's people that are working on code and deploying the code. There's people who are using the platform for their own personal benefit. So they're sharing their own stories. There's people that are just simply reading and reflecting on what's been, published on our platform. So it's really a spectrum, but it's really the sum of all of these parts that really makes Braid what it is. And so, open source, we use that because it's inclusive, really, of all types of engagement with our project.
Yeah. Well, and it's really like, it's really more. I mean, I was thinking about this when you were speaking a little bit earlier too. The more I hear you talk about Braid, this is the most you and I have ever talked specifically about Braid of all the things that we've talked about.
It's so
But
true.
we're trying to stay focused, and so this is having the effect. But um, is how much in how you talk about Braid, it sounds like a living, complex, adaptive system that you're nourishing and that you're sort of helping to bring along because um, first of all you talked about sort of it has these emergent properties, right? Like it's coming into life on its own as part of the process of the co-creation and the co-engagement, co-design with the people that are working on it with you. And then the other thing is that it is other or more than the sum of its parts, right? It's not just a collection of individual contributions. Those individual contributions create this bigger living organism that you have birthed into the world, Raymar.
Yeah, yeah. When you put it like that, I'm like, oh wow, that is a lot. But yeah, that's what we're doing.
I'm still underselling it, is what I would say, but it's fine. So we're going to change just a little bit, which is to think, I mean, everything that we just talked about, right? But what role do you think training students in PIT, whatever sort of that means, which we're still figuring out, what role do you think that plays in driving improvements in social welfare, human rights, democracy? Like where do you think PIT fits into sort of training citizens or denizens of the world?
I think it's everything, honestly. I think it's like, I mean, it sounds cliche, but like, you know, this the future belongs to our students, right? There's current students. Um, and I think as much as they can be a part of the co-creation um, of that future, the better, right? So it's very simple and very like cut and dry for me.
Mm.
Um, and it's why I've anchored my work on guiding students and supporting students. And I really use guide and like supporting very intentional um, because they, they're the ones that have ideas and the answers for their world that they will um, enter, essentially, that they've already entered into, right? So if if as a public interest technologist I can create an environment that encourages learning, that encourages practice, right? I'm really big on practice. And so for me, what that looks like as a developer is like actually building something, bringing something to life and doing all the requisite steps that requires. If I can create an environment and our co-leads on our team can be there to sort of guide and to support and to provide feedback, then I think that we're doing our part. Because yeah, I do think that as we think about techno future, our
Hmm.
future, um, public interest technology, there's so much of a responsibility and a mandate to ensure that our students that we get to engage with and co-create with are really owning and shaping whatever it is that Pitt's supposed to be. Um, you know, we've we've created some structure, right?
Yeah.
And we've done that, but like it's not going to be us that's going to continue this on 10, 20, 30 years into the future. It's going to be the ones that we get to um, mentor and support and guide our students. So I think they're critical. I think it's absolutely critical that we
Yeah.
students who are engaged in this process of building a more just, a more inclusive techno future. So yeah.
That's so well said. And also just makes me think like, again, it's democracy. Pitt is democracy, right? Like this is You build the framework for a democracy, but then it's the constant continuous work of the next generation to keep it going. It doesn't live on its own,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Um, okay, so now like total shift,
Yep, let's do it.
okay? Into just talking more about you and your background and your path to where you are. So I identified you for the purposes of this conversation as a founder. You built Braid. You founded it. You did it. But people who have built something have usually built lots of things. You're a
Mhm.
builder. I know. So tell us about your first memory of building or making or creating something new.
Oh wow, yeah. So for this, I have to go back to, so I have a side. I have two boys at 5 years old, set of twins, and they're voracious like Lego builders. And I was also a Lego builder when I was little. It's something that I enjoyed doing. And so from my earliest memories, I was building Lego creations, and I still enjoy playing with my two boys as they build. And so it's something that gives me a lot of joy, doing things with my hands. Um, since then, I've have started different projects that are like software in nature. But I think that really the ethos around me was just like this insatiable need to just like create stuff. So um, there's a story in our family. My grandfather, rest in peace, he uh, grew up in Mobile, Alabama, and he was a contractor. Really modest means, growing up in Mobile. Um, but as a contractor, he went to different job sites, and obviously, they had work that they had to do at these different job sites. But whatever chance he could get to collect, like discarded materials and discarded bricks, he would take those opportunities to collect these bricks. Um, and he had this vision that he was going to build a house for all of his kids, his wife and all of his kids. And so he collected these bricks over the course of 7 years. And so he was, of course, it's like you collect these bricks, but where do you store them? Right. And so these bricks were, the story as the story goes, these bricks were like in the front yard. And so like my grandmother was just like, what are all these bricks? What are we doing? So like piles and piles of bricks. Um, until he got enough bricks to actually build a house. And so he used those bricks that he collected over 7, 8 years. And all of my aunts and uncles, they actually helped him clean the bricks. But when they got enough bricks, they built a house. And I just think, and I look back on that and I'm just like, wow, just the power in knowing that there's people within my family with that amount of stick to itness, that amount of resourcefulness, that amount of like innovative, that fervor and that spirit. And so yeah, that kind of courses through my DNA as well. Um, and I actually, when I'm down there, when I see the house, which still stands to this day, all of the bricks are just it's a mosaic of different types of bricks. And I just think there's something beautiful in just that story, because a lot of my process has been like being patient, waiting for my time, stacking these bricks. People may be looking at me a little like crazy, like, what's he doing with all this? Right?
It's
Because
like acquiring this random stuff, these
right,
random people that you meet.
right. Oh, okay. It's like, and then you pull it all together and make something beautiful, and then it makes sense. But so yeah, I just think that I'm born. I think my purpose is to build. I think that's my role for this community that I'm a part of, is that I can contribute uh, and express myself through things that are tangible, that people can use and hopefully um, realize value.
Absolutely. It's you know, the the notion of patience, which is really like undervalued by all of us and our society, and also maybe it's always been like that. Like maybe it's always been like that. I don't know. But I think that might be a distinctive feature of a public interest technology, right? Like if you're doing the co-creation and the co-ownership and the failure and iteration and reiteration, everything else, like that doesn't happen fast. It's not an efficient process.
It's not. That's a really good flag. I mean, I think, and it kind of goes back to this idea, like it's really the process, and and so like if we want better products that work, that are not extractive, that don't cause harm, like you have to consider the interests of like
Right.
multiple stakeholders, right? And you have
Right.
to allow them to create the thing that they will actually use. And like it takes time. And so it's like I think a paradigm shift in terms of like ecosystem, you know, resource providers that support the ecosystem of like innovation.
Mm, mm,
It's like maybe there's a shift here where it's like you're shifting your funding model to support new processes, new ways of thinking, as opposed to funding models that you want to know how many users do you have,
right.
like how much traction do you have, all of these things. And I think those,
Market share.
yeah, market share, all these things, but maybe it really is like more funding and more resources to support people who want to do this process differently. Um, so yeah, I think, but but that's a different, that's a subset of funders and investors that are
Yeah.
patient, right? That are going to be there for just like the experimentation, tinkering with the process, creating culture.
Right.
I mean, Ohio State, one of the things that Ohio State football has, right? To go back to, I love the state of their horseshoe is is culture. Culture that's something that's not built overnight. That's
Right.
generations, right? Um, so yeah, I think more attention, more funding on the process, I think is needed.
Imagine venture capital fund for public interest technology. What would that look like?
Yeah, that's right. We have one of our colleagues, shout out here with the Corporation for Public Interest Technology, Sylvester Johnson. I feel like these are all the wicked challenges that maybe he's facing and kind of grappling with is like, yeah, what does venture capital for public interest technology even look like, right?
And
Uh,
where's that money coming from?
where's the money coming from? And because you have to sort of you have to rethink a lot of the economic model, and the incentive structures when you're talking about public interest technology. Because, like I said, like we have to invest in the process, um, and that's messy,
Yeah,
right? And that's messy, especially when you're doing something different.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Um, so kind of on along those lines or like tangential is one of the students, one of my students in this class said, I'm really curious about who given that pit is an emerging field, it's not like you and I don't have degrees in public interest technology, right? That's not like how we were brought up. Um, so given that, like who do you collaborate with? Who have you collaborated with in your pit work? What's the background of your people, right? Where do they come from? Who are they? And how did you come together? How did you find each other?
Yeah. I've been so fortunate and really grateful for the people that I've been able to come across in this on this journey. I mean, you're one of these people that has been just an incredible thought leader, someone that inspires me, the work that you do at the center, what you do for the university network. So there's just like I think it's really like this university network is like
I'm huge
my
with it.
community. It's like so these are, people who are thinking deeply about very wicked, to use your, term, very wicked issues, very wicked problems. Um, and so I would say students are really the backbone of our project. They drive a lot of the user experience, a lot of our thinking in terms of what features we want to offer. So the community really is, pretty, you know, already built in, I think, within the Public Interest Technology University Network. Outside of that, um, it's, I think there is room for all different types of practitioners underneath this pit umbrella, right?
Yeah.
So I really get excited when, we can bring in other voices that are not necessarily centered within Pitt. So artists, for example, I think, there's a whole opportunity to bring artists into the work that we do, writers. Um, so, but I would say like my core or, researchers and students would be like, you know, my my community, I would say.
It really is. I mean, this actually is not designed to be a plug for the Public Interest Technology University Network, but it is a testament to that work because that is how we came to know each other and a bunch of our now collaborators and colleagues who we talk to all the time, right? And it is a testament to what just a little bit of incentive and infrastructure for something like that. It just creates a breeding ground for people to start working together, right?
Totally, totally.
We're really lucky to have that.
Mhm.
Um, What is your super talent or your superpower? This is like my favorite question to ask people is
Yeah,
what do you think is your superpower and how did you figure that out? Um, students in particular, a lot of them think like, I'm not, you said you're here to create, right? Like that's your dharma is one way of saying it.
mm,
And students, you're 20 years old, you're still trying to figure out what you're doing here. Some of us are 40 and still trying to figure out what we're doing here, right? So, what is your superpower and how did you figure that out?
this is a really good. These are great questions. Uh,
I worked
man,
really hard on it, Raymar.
these are like really good questions. I, you know, I think I'm resilient. I think I'm like, you know, I get back up when I just keep getting back up, I would say. I think with this journey that I've been on, there's been, highs and lows. And, I think every journey people have highs and lows, but I think I just been willing to get back up. I've been willing to like, I think like have some confidence that what I believe, um, it has value, and I have some conviction. So I just think this like I don't know if that's a superpower, or just a quality trait that I have. But I think one of my superpowers, I think, is this like I'm just genuinely curious about humanity and about different types of people. And I think a lot of that was from my upbringing in Lima, Ohio, kind of growing up in a small town, um, like saying hi to everybody that you come in contact with, like sparking up conversation, um, it, and like really for no aims or no like transactional purposes, just because it's a person and you're talking to them, and it's just fun. And I get a lot of that, I think, from my dad.
Yeah.
um my dad is like very gregarious, and so I mean, as a child, I remember going into to the store, and like you think you're going to go in and just come right back out, but like literally my dad is like talking to everybody. He's talking to the workers at the store. He's like, and like, just shooting the, what. So
Yeah.
like, and I think a lot of that is like rubbed off on me. And so I think that's my superpower. And I feel like man, I'm glad that my superpower sort of aligns to the work that I do, because I think there's a level of curiosity that you have to have in order to do this kind of work. So I'm curious about my community. I'm curious, like, to hear, their journeys. I'm curious to hear what challenges they may have. I'm just curious to sort of learn more about this thing we call life. And really, um, I think part of the curiosity is like being able to suspend judgment when something doesn't necessarily fit my little small, you know, vantage point or frameworks that I've learned, right? And been conditioned to know. But really just like being able to suspend my judgment and just like allowing like myself to like take in humanity. And so yeah, I think that's probably my superpower.
So, can I tell you an observation
Sure.
that I think is it speaks to your superpower, which is I think your superpower is connection. And
Mhm.
for everything that you just said, right? One of the reasons you and I immediately hit it off was because you're resilient and open in this way that's like you're very much yourself. You know, sometimes you talk to people and they sort of like they start to change themselves a little bit to match you in the
Yeah,
conversation, and you can like feel who those people are when it happens.
yeah,
And you are like always very much yourself,
yeah.
but you are also totally open to connecting with anybody, right? And you give of yourself in a way that then allows people to receive and give back. And I don't, that is not a thing just anybody can do, my friend. And I think it's part of why you have created what you've created
Mhm.
is because of that connection.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I love making new connections with people. I love connecting people together.
Yeah, you do.
So yeah, and so yeah, I've grown to realize that that's something that I'm good at. Yeah.
Yeah, you really are. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this is shamelessly stolen from Adam Grant's podcast, although different questions, but lightning round. Are you
Okay.
ready?
Let's do it.
This is part of the way that you and I make sure that we don't just talk for 3 hours on Zoom and make all of these other Porter saps watch us, right? Stay focused. So, lightning round. Okay. Favorite sci-fi media, book, movie, show, series, whatever.
So yeah, so there's a lot of sci-fi movies and books that I enjoy. One of the books that has resonated with me, and I thought it was a page turner, was this book called Chain Gang All Stars. Um, it's set in a dystopian future. A lot of uh, cultural critique on the cross carceral system. It's sort of a Hunger Games ish type of a plot. Um, so it's it's very it's very visceral and very raw, and at the same time, couched in this very beautiful love story. So Chain Gang All Stars is one that
Okay.
I love. Yeah.
We'll put it in the notes too, so that folks can link to it. All right. Worst or best advice you've ever gotten about creativity or innovation?
Oh yeah. So I won't name any names here. I took a course on the social innovation, and one piece of advice that I got that I've come to realize wasn't as good of advice as it sounded at the time was this. I guess it's an old adage. If you're The adage goes, if you're explaining, you're losing. And so the idea is that, yeah, when you're pitching an idea, if you're having to explain yourself too much, you're losing. And so um, at the time, it sounded good because, I mean, of course, there's like the 30-second elevator pitch, right? You got to
Right.
get everything tight, everything down. Um, but also, some things are just worth explaining. Some things just have more nuance than you could just
Right.
share in 30 seconds in a nice package, right? And
Not
I think
everything's a TikTok.
exactly. So yeah, I think. I think the advice is maybe applicable in some settings, but also in other settings, especially around people who are wanting details, who are wanting nuance,
Right.
and you know, uh, it doesn't really serve myself. It doesn't really serve things too well in those settings. But yeah, that's the piece of advice I think is the worst piece of advice.
What's the question you have for me?
Yeah, I'm really curious, to hear more about, um, yeah, just the work that you're doing at the Patel Center, um, the role of students in that work, and kind of where you see public interest technology, right? Um, you know, I know we talk about this a lot, but like with your course, this intersection policy. Um, certainly we're talking about technology and the process of technology, but I'm really curious to hear from you. Like, where do you see public interest technology? Where do you see the role of students in this field as well?
So I'm going to give you a lightning round response,
Yes.
which is I'm going to force myself to be short.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a big question. I
it's
know.
a big,
For a lightning
you know
round.
how hard that is for me. Um, I think, this course is a tiny, tiny piece of this, but I think public interest technology came out of the civil rights movement, came out of public interest law and founded in the civil rights movement. And I think that it has, in establishing itself as a field, it has started to anchor itself to academic institutions. And I don't think that's good.
Mhm.
And so I think part of training students and talking with students about what public interest technology is as that democratizing force that you mentioned, I think part of the reason that that's important from an academic's perspective is to put it back in the hands of people who are going to leave the academy and go be in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Yeah, that's right. I'm on board with that as well. I agree
Yeah,
with that as
I
well.
know you are,
Yeah, I'm
for
doing
sure.
it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I asked, what's a question you have for students? And I want you already gave me a response earlier. So I wonder, pose this question to the students knowing that they're going to have an opportunity to build a profile in Braid and respond to you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's the question of like what values do you believe are important for public interest technology, right? Um, I mentioned some values, in terms of focus on the process, um, the team, co-ownership, things like that nature. But I'm really curious, right? Like, what what do you all think, creates the most optimal public interest technology products and services? What values or what practices, what norms, what cultural norms do you think are important? Because I think for me, I'm really dialed in on more of the inputs of
Yeah.
public interest technology, right? So that would be the question that I would have for students, and that's the question that is reflective on Braid as a prompt.
So, sort of along with that, that's a great homework assignment for these students is to know that they have the option. It is not a graded assignment from me, but they have an option of responding to your homework assignment by joining in on Braid, and we'll provide them with those links so they'll have all that. But I love homework. It's my favorite thing. I love getting homework. I love doing homework. I love giving homework. So give them something else to do or read or listen to or participate in.
So I think a really good text to read, is this book Techno Feudalism. Um, Giannis Varoufakis is, probably mispronouncing his last name, but the book is called Techno Feudalism.
Okay.
And I think it's a really good primer to understand, um, sort of the predicament that we're in as people living in the digital world, right? In this digital age, right? As consumer of technology, just understanding and really um, understanding, I think, our role in the proliferation of technology, the concentration of power, okay, um, and sort of what that all means, right? And I think it's a really good primer when we think about what public interest technology could be, right?
Mhm.
As something that is reimagined, maybe from what we're currently experiencing as users of choose your favorite platform. Uh, so techno feudalism for sure.
Okay. That's also homework for me because I haven't read that one yet. And
Awesome.
so
Yeah,
I'm glad because now I have another. I only have like three books on my nightstand that I'm currently reading, so I am happy to have another one folded in.
awesome, awesome.
Okay. So I promised that I would keep us to under an hour because don't nobody want to listen to any conversation for more than an hour. So we are there again for anybody who's interested in learning more about Braid, joining its community. You can check out braider.io, and we'll put that link in the notes as well. Um, Raymar, I am so grateful for our connection for a whole host of reasons. But what I appreciate most about you and what you've created with Braid is that contributing to Braid helped me rediscover a joy in my writing. Writing had become for me, like for so many of us, something that I simply have to do to get my job done, right? A perfunctory, a joyless act, but a totally necessary one to just do my job. But engaging with you and others on Braid has brought a lot of that joy back to me as an exercise to sort of do writing just for the sake of thinking and connecting and unpacking things. And I'm just tremendously grateful for that. So I want you to know that.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you so much. And it's really good to hear that and to know that um, that we're doing our small part, I think,
Yeah.
to add value. And makes me feel good. It validates the work that our team's been doing. So I'll take that back to our team as well. So thank you. Thank you.
So thank you so much again for joining us and for sharing the passion and your passion and your purpose with our students and with others. I, of course, cannot wait for our next virtual coffee date. I really can't wait for the next time we get to have coffee in person because that is the single biggest joy of my life.
Sure. For sure.
But thank you, Raymar. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome. Thanks, everyone.